We live in the greatest country, that it's based on capitalism, that it's based on allowing people to take risk, build businesses, allowing people to realize their dream. A lot of people migrate out of all the countries. They come here for a better future.
Hey, everyone. Do you wonder what to do with your money? Do you know what the world has in store for us? I mean, financially in the next few months? All you have to do is watch, Fox Business, look at CNBC, pick up the Wall Street Journal, look at the papers. And if you're like me, just a regular Joe with basic financial knowledge, you're probably feeling pretty confused. You're probably wondering, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my money. I go through that all the time. So I actually asked Allegiance Gold, who is a sponsor of my show, could you please come on the show and just explain what it is that maybe we could be doing, we need to do better at, as far as diversifying funds, as far as investing money. Now, this is, of course, just me having a conversation with Alex Ebkarian. He is the co-founder of Allegiance Gold. But this is a deep conversation, one that I think I'm asking a lot of the questions that you might be asking, and it's not telling you what to do financially. That's not my job. I'm not a financial expert, but I'm asking those questions, and I plan on bringing more financial experts to the show. But Alex is so great at explaining what is happening with our banking system. By the way, the terrifying prospects that we are going to be moving away from, dollars. Just everything will be, in our phones, and that the government will have full control of our financial dollars. That really worries me. And I think that's something that we should all be concerned about. So you will not want to miss this episode. Trust me, you want to hear what he has to say. He's just so well educated in this, and he worked with so many financial institutions before founding Allegiance Gold. This isn't just somebody who's just willy-nilly talking about things that he doesn't understand. He actually knows what he's talking about. And by the way, if you haven't heard me talk about Allegiance Gold and this is your first time, it is an amazing company that really does care about you and about diversifying your funds. And it wants to build a long-term relationship with you. And right now you can get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. I'm going to bring up when he comes on, believe me, what happened in Canada and how the Canadian government sees control of the banks, what is happening here with our woke banking system and how those banks are taking control over our everyday lives, and what we can do to try to say, hey, in case something goes sideways, do I have gold? And what does that mean? What does it mean having gold in your hands? I mean, how does that play out in the future? How does it help your family? I'm going to ask him all those questions. And right now you can get $5,000 of free silver. Listen to this, on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait, call or click today. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, or go to protectwithsara.com. That is protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, or protectwithsara.com. Okay, everyone, here's me talk about Allegiance Gold all the time on the show. They are a sponsor of the Sara Carter Show, and I'm so grateful for this company. I'm so grateful for them because I do believe in diversifying funds, but more importantly, I love the fact that it's not only a company that I believe in, but one that believes in me. And I have today a very special guest, Alex Ebkarian. He is the co-founder of Allegiance Gold. I'm so excited to have you on the show, Alex. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. I think our partnerships in the last year to date has grown. We're very grateful for you, the work that you do for our audience, and you're a trooper, so we appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I'm excited about Allegiance Gold. And one of the reasons that I said, yes, I would love for them to be a partner with the Sara Carter Show. And I remember when it was first brought to me is you have one of the highest ratings in the industry. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I always tell all of our listeners, look, do the homework yourself. We saw all kinds of crazy, insane fluctuations in the economy, and I think we're still seeing it. And a lot of people are afraid of what the future may hold. So I always say, do the research yourself. But I really do believe in diversifying funding, and I've said this in all of my, my spots for Allegiance Gold, but I talk about your 5-star rating with TrustLink, your AAA rated with the Better Business Consumer Alliance, and you have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you take a lot of pride in that, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is the byproduct of what we do. So at the end of the day, we're in the business of helping people. We believe that everyone should have a portion of their assets diversify in physical gold. We're very much passionate about the education. We take pride in constantly training. But what we learned over the years is that we can only grow organically. So we have to do the right thing for the clients and for our employees. So giving back to the community, we're very much a big part in doing that constantly. And we don't do it just to get a check mark. We actually believe in it. So for example, supporting the police department, supporting the fire department. We have about 5 veterans that work for our organizations. Few years back, actually, we not only supported the VA office, but we went and volunteered at the local VA office. For me, it was an eye-opening. A lot of the management team members went, and we got a glimpse of all the services that the VA provides, whether it's supporting the local hospital or trying to put a smile on a kid's face through supporting St. Jude for research for cancer for kids. We're constantly trying to make a difference, and we believe that will have a ripple effect. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of our clients appreciate. And as a matter of fact, over the years, we started giving back to causes that matters to them. So that's very, very important for us.
That means so much to me too. I think about that a lot. I believe in organic growth. I believe in delivering what you say you're going to deliver. And I think that organic growth lasts longer than when you're trying to just, and even with podcasting, it's the same thing with me. I want to be able to reach an audience and be honest with them and have that growth be organic and not purchased or any of that stuff. I believe in building an audience that's real and one that I develop a relationship with. And I believe that's the same for any company. I just don't think we've seen in recent times, in modern times, so much fluctuation in the economy. And it scares me. I mean, I'm a regular person, and I look out at what's going on in our economy. And I saw what was happening early on with Silicon Valley Bank. And I mean, it feels like it was over a year ago. It was only less than a month ago. But, the bank got shut down by regulators. It was one of the biggest bank failures since the global financial crisis. I mean, that was pretty scary. And and I saw it happening even during COVID. When I was in Canada, I was in Ottawa, and I was out there with the truckers, at the protests, interviewing them. And I couldn't believe when the Canadian government actually seized accounts of some of the truckers and even people that were donating money. It was like, well, wait a minute. Isn't this supposed to be like a private bank protecting your dollars? And so I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that and why diversifying is so important. I try to emphasize it over and over and over again, but I think coming from somebody like you, Alex, who's an economist, somebody who understands how the economy works and how business works, why is this so important for families to really diversify their funds?
Sure. Happy to go over it. I'd like to share with you, I don't know if I have, I started my career with a company called Smith Barney, which manages a lot of high net worth individuals. And then later on, they got acquired by Morgan Stanley. Fast forward, I've spent about 12 years in banking. I've done close to about $1 billion in financing. And the reason why I bring this up is because I understand the importance of debt along with the economic engine that we have. So sitting on the other side of the aisle where you're making a decision based on, will they repay the loan back, it gives you a different perspective. But when I change my lens into actually thinking about it from a consumer's perspective, from a regular everyday individual, and understand the dynamic, then the entire perspective changes. So as far as the banking concerned, it is very, very important for people to understand. Let's go back to March. Silicon Valley Bank, the 16th largest bank in the US, all of a sudden, in a matter of hours, got dismantled. And that happened very simply because of how the bank was managing its risk, along with what was happening with the interest rates environment. That had a domino effect, but the FDIC had to intervene. We know that the FDIC limit is about 250,000. That's where the limit is insured for every depositors. And just to give you a little bit more perspective, back in 2008, when we had the other bailouts of the banking system, that limit used to be about 100,000. And in being a banker at that point, seeing fellow bankers rushing to the bank, pulling out the money, that's why the regulators started increasing the amount so that way people keep their funds in the banking system. Now, in the last couple months,
but even just having 250,000 insured, with FDIC, I mean, for people that invested large sums of money, like millions of dollars, I mean, it's got to be terrifying because, yeah, you're right. You go back to 2008, and I remember that. I mean, that was a truly terrifying financial crisis. You could even go back even to the late 90s when things started to collapse, like up in Northern California. Remember, it was with all of the investments and all of the technology firms that were up there that we saw that. So this isn't like unheard of. It's not like it's not going to happen again. So I mean, for people with millions of dollars invested, that's pretty scary.
absolutely. And then if you combine the multiple factors, we have the banking sector. Right now, there's a big question mark. It wasn't just about Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank occurred. Then we had the Signature Bank, and then we had First Republic.
Right.
Okay. Ironically, all these three banks, they're located in blue states. You have in California and New York. So what's been happening is very, very simple. The FDIC had to intervene to fix this problem. When this is another form of a bailout, the Federal Reserve said, we're going to stop the quantitative easing. In other words, we're going to stop printing. Okay. But in March, they printed more than 300 billion. They did that to basically bail out the Silicon Valley Bank. So you have to think about the risk. It's not only the bank in itself, it's the underlying assets. The underlying asset is just paper-based. Right now, we're experiencing the highest inflation in the last 42 years, despite the numbers dropping from 8 to 5%. What the government is telling us in terms of the inflation rate, it's a joke. The everyday American, when they go to the grocery store, they feel it. It's no longer about $1 going to $1.05. Items that used to cost about $1 right now, they're costing about $3, $4. Just take what's an example that my wife told me?
A dozen
eggs,
of milk?
or eggs. A gallon of milk.
Yeah, eggs, milk. I was just ordering groceries right now. I normally don't do that. I usually go into the grocery store. But this time I had to order because I'm going to be leaving out of the country and my husband can't drive. And I don't know if you know, he was a blinded veteran in Afghanistan. So I said, okay, look, I'm just going to order groceries today because we've got too much on our plate. And I'm looking at the cost of groceries again every time. And I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, we used to be that you could get so many bags of groceries for $150, right? And you're like, okay, and that's money. Now you $300 for a family. And you're like thinking, well, how do people afford this that aren't both working or, they're making minimum wage? I mean, It's a very, very difficult situation for Americans.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Have our wages gone up in the last 6 months?
Right. No.
So what's been happening is people are dipping into their savings. They're making sacrifices. Their lifestyle is changing. But what happened at the same time, we got accustomed to paying those types of prices. You go to a restaurant, prices are higher. The amount that they're providing is much lower. They have a business to run. Their operating costs are increasing. When oil prices goes up because of lack of proper policies, that has a triple, it just drops down on every single aspect, from freight to the regular products that we're buying. And that's how, for me, inflation is the cruelest form of taxation. There's not a lot that you can do against it. And you feel it when you spend it. So when we take a step back and really understand the environment that we're in, and talk about what's happening to inflation. We know that inflation is a symptom of a weak currency. Now, why are we having a weak currency? Well, let's go back about 2 or 3 years during the pandemic. At that time, they decided, and when I say they, the government, the Federal Reserve, they decided to save the economy, but they had to sacrifice the currency. In other words, all this printing that occurred, okay? Right now, we're at the midst of debt ceiling discussions. If you go back since the 60s, Congress has raised the debt ceiling nearly 80 times. It's not a surprise that the debt ceiling is going to go up, okay? But you have to wonder and say to yourself, me as an individual, how many times can I go to my credit card provider and say, please increase the limit?
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, because that is exactly what I say. We have, and I just have to jump in here because this is what's so frustrating to me, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, we don't get that break. We can't just go increase our credit limit. Go ahead and call American Express. My credit limit is great, but if I don't make that payment, they're not going to increase my credit limit the next year. They're not, and they're not going to keep increasing it if I don't have the capability of paying that back. And right now, our government isn't slowing down inflation. That's the problem. People are dipping into their savings. They're just going crazy. I think it's because of post-COVID, like everybody just wants to get out, do stuff. So people are dipping into their savings. Inflation isn't slowing down. So are we looking at a looming recession? I mean, what's your assessment of that? Because I feel like you're going in that direction.
Yeah, it's not only just my opinion, it's the opinion of a lot of economists. But if we take a step back and really understand this, recession is actually a good thing. It's not that it's a bad thing, okay?
Right.
Historically, it occurred every 7 to 10 years, okay? If you think about a forest, even in the forest, there is natural fire. What that occurs is it simply gets away with the bad roots to allow growth for the new roots. Now, in our economy, we remember the 1999 collapse of the dot-com. We remember the bailout of the 2008 financial recession. But if you look at the time horizon, it's been 15 years that we have not had any recession. Forget about the pandemic. That was a blip in the radar, okay? Because we had the fastest recovery, at least on paper. But if you understand the definition of recession, it just means 2 consecutive quarters of weak economic data. But in other words, what that is people don't have confidence, jobs are cut, people are losing their jobs, the interest rates is going up, affordability goes down, the performance of a company's stock is impacted. And right now, when you ask yourself, are we headed to a recession? You just have to look at the facts. It's been 15 years that we haven't had a recession. So that's a warning in itself. We know that the banks, by the way, the banks sit in a very unique position. People have to understand this. On one side of the equation, they know how much money people are depositing. And guess what's happening to the money? Because of the drop in consumer confidence, that money has been going out into different vehicles. Who's benefiting from this? Some of the large banks. So what's happening? The big is getting bigger, okay? Just because we kick down the problems from small banks, it doesn't mean that it went away. This is like we're in a stage 2 cancer that things are getting worse and worse.
Explain that because I'm very interested in that. I think that's a really great point that you made. And I want people to understand where you're coming from because you're saying this isn't over. What we saw happening with the small banks is like an effect of something that could be much greater because we're not paying attention. And you're saying it's not just the small banks, but the bigger banks as well, right? That are facing potential problems. And I say potential because we don't know what will the future bring. We're not sure about those anomalies. But talk about like what could happen with the big banks.
Sure. Look, if every consumer decides to pull money out of their banks, it's going to create a chaos. If you've been to a bank and you've asked them to pull more than 5, 10,000, they're going to start questioning you. It's your money. It's none of their business, but they question you. It happened to me multiple times during COVID. I wanted to pull some money. I wanted to have some cash on hand. And when I went to the bank, without naming the bank, top large 4 banks, it could either be Wells Fargo, Citi, Chase. What happened was they told me I had to wait 3-4 days for me to get my money back. Okay. So what I meant by the fact that we're in a cancer stage is very simple. Interest rates have gone up 10 times. Okay. In the last 16 years, we are living through the highest level of interest rates. Now, if you have money where you're benefiting and gaining interest, that's a good thing for you. But if you have too much debt, guess what? The cost of servicing that debt is going to go high. It's going to go higher. In other words, the interest on that is increasing. So right now, let's look at the commercial real estate market. The size of that market is about 20 trillion. In the next 12 months, there are over 1.5 trillion loans that are coming to maturity. Those loans benefited with a 3.25% interest rates. So the landlord or the property owner that was making their mortgage payment, it was based on 3.5, 4%. Right now, that's automatically going to be adjusted and it's going to go up to the new rate in the market, which is close to 7 to 8%. What do you think is going to happen to their payment? So if they were relying on generating positive cash flow to sustain their lifestyle or just to cover all their debt obligation, guess what? What's going to happen is they're not going to be in a position, they could very well be underwater. And if they're underwater, we saw what happened in 2008. If people didn't have enough skin in the game, it was very easy for them to walk away from their homes. That resulted in foreclosures, bankruptcies.
Everywhere. I saw it all over California. And I remember, and that's what I wonder is happening. And I don't know, it's not happening as much now, maybe as it did back then in 2008. But I do remember in 2008 and before that, when they were trying to sell homes, people were just walking in and making stuff up on their applications. Nobody was even checking applications. I would think to myself, like, how did that person just buy this house for $800,000 back then? Somebody who might have been working with me and I was not making very much money and neither were they. And they said, well, I just said I made this much. I go, but yeah, but you still got to make the payment every month,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, so absolutely. But the good thing is that the banks are tightening the belt. So we're not in a position where people are as much as we used to, at least. But here's what's happening at the same time. I'm glad you mentioned real estate. The values of real estates are dropping. To provide an example so people can understand what is the impact of this increase in interest rate. The interest rate went from a 3.25 on a 30-year mortgage, roughly about 7%. If you were someone who afforded let's say a $500,000 mortgage, your payment was going to be about $2,200. Today, in order for you to maintain the same amount of payment, that loan amount drops to $327,000. In other words, we're seeing about 35% drop in affordability. Okay, if people
Right.
can't
So
afford,
if you did not have a fixed interest rate on a 30-year loan, if yours was fluctuating, if it was an arm or what, anything like that, you're looking at ballooning payments where you might not even be able to afford it.
correct. And in the commercial real estate market, the reason why I bring that up, they don't give a 30-year fixed loan. They typically provide a 5-year loan with a 30-year amortization. In other words, every 5 to 10 years, there is some sort of a reset on the interest rates. So going back to the problem in the banking system, a bank sits in a very unique position. They see what type of their borrowers are experiencing early defaults or early delays in payment. And on the other side, they know what's happening to the depositors where the money's dropping. So, and when the banks start tightening the belt, it's an indication. That means they don't have confidence of what's to happen, at least in the short term. So if you combine where we are with the economy, what's happening to the job numbers, what is the consumer confidence, and what's happening to inflation, it's not a surprise that the regulators right now, they're struggling to strike a debt ceiling deal before the X day. Okay, they want to make sure that the economy continues. They want to make sure that people are still collecting their Social Security benefits. But you mentioned something important earlier that I'd like to go back to when you said when you were up in Canada.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that again. And then I wanted to say this is probably the reason why you're saying diversify your fund. So it's not all stuck in one thing. But I do want you to go back to Canada because I want you to address that because I feel like we're at the same we have the same problems here in a different way, but very similarly.
Yeah. I mean, think about it this way. If they don't like your political views, if they don't like your affiliation, and all of a sudden they place restriction on you, what happens to your privacy? We live in the greatest country that it's based on capitalism, that it's based on allowing people to take risk, build businesses, allowing people to realize their dream. A lot of people migrate out of all the countries. They come here for a better future. Now, when our financial freedom is in a question mark, that puts us back. So when Canada did what they did, when the government colluded with the banking system and started placing restrictions, it tells you that they're after control.
Hey everyone, you know how much I love Mike Lindell, how much I love My Pillow and My Pillow products. And right now, there is a huge special for my listeners. This is My Pillow 2.0. When Mike invented My Pillow, it had everything you ever wanted in a pillow. But now, nearly 20 years later, he discovered a new technology that makes My Pillow even better. Did you know core body temperature plays in a role in how well you sleep? Stop flipping the pillow over and trying to find the cool spot with My Pillow 2.0. Right now, you can buy one and get one free on My Pillow 2.0 when you use promo code Carter. That's CARTER. For a limited time, when you buy one My Pillow 2.0, you get another one free with code Carter. Go to mypillow.com for My Pillow 2.0. Buy one, get one pricing, plus discounts on your favorite My Pillow products like towels, sheets, slippers, and so much more by using what? Promo code Carter, CARTER. Stay cool and sleep better with the My Pillow 2.0 buy one, get one free sale going on now at mypillow.com, promo code Carter. Mypillow.com, promo code Carter. Even the babies love it. Financial security must be a priority for you and your family. If you want more ways to protect your hard-earned dollars, subscribe to my show on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks so much.
Back in March of 2022, President Biden, signed an executive order allowing the research on digital currencies. Fast forward, during Thanksgiving, when everyone was getting ready for the holidays, the New York Fed, along with 12 leading financial institutions, they announced the pilot testing of the digital dollar. Okay? And then in the last couple months, the Federal Reserve announced that starting with July 1st, we're going to start accepting the FedNow payment. So the question is, why are we headed towards a digitalization of the dollar? Are they after our privacy? What is the intention? Go ahead.
No, right. I'm blown away because this is exactly what people have been talking to me about. What they're concerned about the most is this FedNow payment. And a lot of people are saying the Americans aren't paying attention. They're not seeing what's going on here. And before you know it, it's going to be all digital currency. And then we will not have control. It's not like you're going to be able to go to your closet. Like I remember my grandmother having a jar hidden away with all of her money because they learned during the Great Depression and, from her family, what it would take to have money in the house. You're not going to have that anymore. The government's going to have full control over your money and over your life in that case.
Isn't it ironic that we, the people, elect them for their role in the government? They are supposed to serve the people, but through their action, what it appears to me at least is a lot of our privacy, a lot of our freedom, a lot of the things that we value, it's under jeopardy. So if we take a step back and think about control and think about why is it important, this is where gold comes into play. Gold is a true diversification. All of our assets, let it be in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, and I'm not speaking any negative about those. I'm talking about true diversification. Given the option where all of your assets are paper-based versus having some diversity with some real tangible real estate or real tangible physical gold, that a diversified portfolio is a better protected portfolio. So number one is it's about the actual diversification. Now, speaking about tangible assets, gold is not man-made. It's whatever God has placed on this earth. It's not like the dollar where overnight we say, okay, we're going to go out and print. And the fact that it's a scarce asset, it's a commodity that it's not consumed. It's not like oil, for example. Oil, you consume it, you lose it. Gold is actually a finite supply. That's one of the things that we have the value. Now, I always like to talk about the three P's of gold. Recently, we were interviewed by, you might know him actually, one of your colleagues in Texas, Ben Armenta.
Yeah. I know Ben Armenta. Yeah.
We were talking about the philosophy of the family, faith, and basically freedom. And as we were talking about that, we draw the parallel about gold. Gold provides the three simple P's. Number one, it gives you the protection / preservation. Number two, it gives you that privacy. And number three, it gives you that profit potential. So when we think about protection, we think about what's happening economically. Any uncertainty, banking-wise, inflation-wise, market-wise, recession-wise, things that you have an asset that it's not correlated. In other words, it doesn't move in the same direction. When we think about a privacy is I want to have control over my assets. I want to eliminate the counterparty risk. Do you remember where you were in 9/11, Sarah?
Yeah, I actually do. I'm like, yeah, I do. I remember I was in California. I was watching it on TV after my mother called me. Yeah. So it's like one of those moments, in history where it ingrains in your brain because it was such a traumatic incident.
Sure. And it definitely left a dent in history. But a lot of people forget what happened. The market was shut down for a few days. It's called like a black swan event. In other words, something unexpected happens that people all of a sudden started negatively reacting. So when the market was shut down, when everyone's assets was based on the grid, stock market, all the bond, they could not liquidate. Versus if you have a physical asset like gold, silver, it actually, when we talk about a counterparty risk, you're in control. And that's the core essence of gold. You will be in control.
No, that's such a great point. Because I remember I grew up my dad worked for Lockheed Martin. We went to Saudi Arabia when I was young. And I remember when I got there, it was different than it is today. It was building up then. So it wasn't about oil. Oil is, like you said, it's one of those assets, that I know everybody thinks of Saudi Arabia, they think of oil, but it wasn't about that. I remember every time I saw a little girl in the souk or in the market, her arms would be filled with little gold banglets. And it was, when I traveled overseas, I would notice a lot of little children or women with gold bangles on their wrists. And they would say this is because this is an asset that they will always have. Like if anything goes bad, if anything goes wrong, they could just pull those banglets off their wrist, and they would have money in their hands. And so I've always found this to be really interesting because it is so tangible, because we can have it at home, that it's something that we can count on and rely on, not like Fed now. I would be scared. I mean, if it shut down like it did even during 9/11, or God forbid some other black swan event in the future, and you had nothing in your house to even negotiate with, that would be pretty frightening.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And I'd like to take it even a step further. And this is where the education part comes in handy. I grew up in a system where I got educated, I was ready for the corporate world, and I wouldn't question the status quo. So, whatever was provided, that was the norm. Like diversifying your portfolio in mutual funds, bonds, and some real estate, that was the way to go. But as soon as I started questioning the status quo, I realized that there was friction. And the more I did research, the more I realized that the everyday American does not even know. If someone educated in finance and statistics that loves the market and doesn't have access to this information, God knows that the everyday individual, how easy is it for them to have access to that? So what I mean by that is this. There's a reason why Wall Street and the banking system the government, they actually don't want you to know about gold because they want to keep you in their system. I remember vividly when we were talking about gold earlier in the days, I'm accustomed to it. I grew up in a family that always had some gold. I can tell you many, many different stories. Let it be from my grandfather passing on some coin collection and teaching me the value of money. And he would always say to me, he will say, Alex, the compound effect of inflation will lower your buying power. And I would never understand that till one day he gave me an example. And he said, back in the 1930s, an ounce of gold was $20. And if you wanted to get a custom-made suit with a $20 bill or an ounce of gold, you could have gotten that. Fast forward, you will always be able to get a custom-made suit with that ounce of gold. But you're not even going to get a pocket made with that $20 bill. That is when I realized the importance of the preservation. See, everyone is so busy looking at statements and that things are going up, but they don't think about the buying power. $1 million today can only, well, if we go back 23 years, $1 million back then, today will only buy you about $480,000. But if you look at where gold was back in early 2000, it was roughly about 300. Today, gold is around 2,000. That's about 6 times increase. So, but nothing happened to the gold. It's just the same ounce of gold. What happened is that the value of our money dropped, and it takes a lot more dollars to get the same ounce of gold. So once you start understanding the importance of preservation, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I have 2 kids. I think about their future, obviously, and I think about how can I put them at a better position than my parents did to me and my siblings. But the preservation is a big part of it. Why? Because we grew up understanding the benefit of physical gold. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'd like to educate everyone about. It's not a matter of you putting all your eggs in a single basket. You have to be able to think about properly diversifying. And there's definitely a place and time for you to own some physical gold and silver.
I think that's so brilliant. And yeah, and I because I also want to see my children prosper and do better than better than me and my husband. We always talk about that. And I do believe in that tangible, right? But I love the way you explained it, that it's still the same ounce of gold. It's going to give you what so much more than the devaluation of the dollar, right? But it's tangible and it's something that you have. Where can people go, Alex? Because I want everyone to have this opportunity to be able to diversify their funding, be able to do it with a company that actually stands by, and I stand by you. You stand by your company and your word. You guys are amazing, and that's why you're a part of the Sara Carter Show. Where can the audience go? Where can they go to buy gold, to learn more about diversifying their money and doing this the right way?
Look, we understand that there are a lot of options for people to buy gold. But if you're going to buy gold and silver, do yourself a favor and buy it the right way. You want to make sure that you buy the right product with the right company, with the right individual. And the fact that we're on your show, obviously, we like people to come and work with us. We will take care of you. We have people that are extremely excited and passionate about serving people. It's like I said, it's about doing the right thing for our clients. So that you can visit our website, protectwithsara.com. You can call us directly at 844-790-9191. Have a consultation. There's no obligation. We look for developing a deepened relationship. We're not looking for a transaction. We understand the power of gold. See, gold is very simple. It doesn't depend on a company's profit like stocks. It doesn't depend on people paying back their loan like a bond. It doesn't depend on a renter making their payment on a real estate. It's simple. It sits there and it does what it needs to. So we look forward to helping your audience member, and we look forward to assisting everyone and educating them about the importance of physical gold.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'd love to have you back on the show. Well, I hope you all learned as much as I did today about what we can do to help diversify our funding and really protect our family's assets. Thank you so much, Alex, for being a part of the show. I hope he comes back on real soon. I like to have different subjects, and especially when it comes to the economy, I feel like I learn so much more the more I talk to people, and I hope you did too. Remember to follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at S Carter DC. God bless you. God bless our great nation, and God bless the great state of Texas.